Can I listen to music with bad words, right? This is a conversation that seems to come up over and over again, especially in Christian circles, and it usually gets reduced to something overly simple. Should you only listen to Christian music, or are you allowed to listen to secular music too, right? On one side, there's a desire to protect the heart, to be careful about what enters in, and on the other side, there's a kind of dismissal, right? A belief that you can partake into it without being deeply affected by it. But both of these positions feel incomplete to me. The deeper question, at least for me, is not what label something carries, but what is the message actually being received and what that reception does within me over time. In any system, interaction changes the state of that system. So whether I'm conscious of it or not, I am always receiving. And whatever I take in does not just pass through me untouched. Energy interacting with energy in whatever way, shape, or form changes both energies. In this case, attention directed at a thought will ultimately change that thought in some way, molding it somehow, usually by reinforcing or weakening that thought. Each interaction externally will internally change, settle, shape, and eventually form my internal being. Eventually, it becomes part of what I carry, and what I carry inevitably becomes part of what I express. In that sense, I'm not just a consumer of content, I am a container, and everything I allow in becomes part of what I will one day give out. This is where things get complicated in a way that simple rules and heated, divided arguments about what is considered Christian music doesn't account for. I've been watching Ozark recently, and there are elements of it that I genuinely do not want in me. Scenes, themes, and messages that are sorely misaligned with the kind of person I want to become. And yet, at the same time, there is something undeniably compelling about the craftsmanship of the show itself, the way tension is built, the intentionality of each frame, the restrained dialogue, the way silence itself is a storytelling tool. There is a kind of excellence there that feels worth paying attention to, learning from. The show itself, disregarding the morality of the content, is a masterclass, in my opinion, in cinematography. So this is similar to how I listen to the band Palace, not for any moral content of theirs, though I often feel like Palace alludes to a deeper and positive reality in their music, but I listen because it sounds freaking great. The greatness of the art itself is more important to me rather than whether or not my internal moral compass aligns with their moral compass. So I find myself in this tension, as you likely do as well. If I avoid everything that contains elements I don't agree with, I risk cutting myself off from beauty, creativity, and skill that could deepen my own ability to create and develop me as a person. But if I engage with it, I am not immune to what it carries. I can tell myself that I'm only there for the cinematography, the storytelling, the techniques, but the truth is, I don't have perfect control over what affects me on a deeper level. There are things that bypass intention entirely, things that linger, that resurface later in subtle ways, maybe ways we don't even notice ourselves. And yet, I don't think the answer is to retreat into a sanitized world where everything is labeled safe. Not only because that world doesn't truly exist, but because God does not seem absent from creativity simply because it exists outside of explicitly Christian domains. Every domain which the best parts of us see beauty in are in some way us recognizing a reflection of God. There are works of art created by people who don't believe in God at all, but what they create resonates the same truth, beauty, and longing we find at the altar. At the same time, there are works created within Christian spaces that, despite their label, feel hollow, self-serving, or even subtly distorting of God's very nature. The more time I spend alive, the more my previous notions of a yes, no, right, wrong, white, black, binary view of the world seem to disappear. Oh no, I'm deconstructing, right? How terrible to presume to see reality more clearly, and dare I question if my old beliefs are still my current truths. I don't think it's possible to cleanly separate form from content as much as I might want to. I can't perfectly extract only what I deem good and leave behind everything else. That level of precision would require a kind of inner control that I simply don't possess. In fact, the presumption that is even possible to do so calls me back to a garden where man fell because he chose to lean on his own knowledge of good and evil. So instead of pretending that I can filter perfectly, I'm starting to think that the posture has to shift from control to awareness. Not a rigid set of rules based on the number or severity of culturally appropriate language or images, but an attentiveness to what I am receiving, what I am containing, and what I am broadcasting. Because in the end, the issue is not what I consume, but what I become through that consumption. Everything I take in participates in some way in forming me. And whatever forms me will eventually be expressed outward, whether in my words, my actions, or the things that I create. So the question cannot simply be, is this allowed? It has to become something so honest, so personal, and so important to my being that the only thing I need to answer for myself and to God is something like, is this bringing me into alignment with who I'm created to be? What is this doing to me? What is this forming in me? Is that what I want to carry into the world? I don't have a clean answer to this. If you've seen my other videos, I never do. In fact, I will rarely have an answer that you can feel, you can confidently hold on to as your own. You and I are different people living in different worlds. It feels more like this tension I find myself in, you likely do as well, is intentionally there to be lived in rather than a rule to be made and then followed. Even what I have written here could be turned into a rule for yourself. But what good is that? Now you have Alex's rules instead of someone else's rules. Or perhaps you use my rules to shape your rules. Disregard the rule-making framework that rules your thinking. But I do know that I don't want to move through life passively absorbing whatever is placed in front of me. Nor do I want to rely on labels as a substitute for discernment. Somewhere between avoidance and indifference, there's a more nuanced but life-giving path. One that requires being awake, being honest, and willing to acknowledge both the beauty and the danger in what I engage with. And maybe that's the real work. Not drawing perfect lines, but becoming the kind of person who can remain present enough to not be unconsciously shaped by what is undesired. It was a Substack post I wrote. I think I'm just going to continue to write and then share what I'm writing on here because I can intentionally think it out. In the past, what I've done is I've written and then I've turned it into a script that's more intelligible and easy to explain and give over video. But I'm going to be more intentional about posting what I post and also starting to do the short form content. So it'll probably look like 2 videos a week here on YouTube, long form, likely reflecting what I've written on Substack, which is also long form, just from what I'm reading and what I'm learning and thinking about throughout my time here on Earth. And then the short form content to be kind of like a more cut down version of this, a 15-second version, a joke version, a 30-second, a 60-second, something that is going to honestly bring in views and meet people on the platforms where they are and ask them for 30 seconds of their attention, 90 seconds of their attention to eventually be able to talk to you guys here. So appreciate you listening, and I won't be doing the daily uploads anymore. Like I said, I just feel like there hasn't been much fruit from it. The ones that have been fruitful have been the ones where I sat down, was very intentional about it. But part of me making those is that YouTube will cannibalize the videos if I post daily. And so while one video is going really well, then the next video, it gets 1,000 views overnight. The next video I post, the minute I post that video, the other one drops down, and that one doesn't have the chance to actually be seen. And so for purposes of the algorithm, purposes of quality, so I can actually very intentionally write and record these for you guys and share thoughts in a more organized and intentionally impactful way. That's why I'm going to cut down on the videos. So yeah, anyways, that's it. It's Friday, wonderful day. And we got some awesome work done. I'm going to think over the weekend about how I want the content to look like on, Insta, X, and all those. So yeah, love you guys.